Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Online Warriors podcast. I'm Illeagle86 and I'm very warm. That's just a fun fact about me right now. I'm going through something. Well, I'm always going through something, but Nerdbomber, Techtic, allow me to share with you my personal trials right now. For those that don't know me outside of podcast land, I'm a big fan of sweaters. Nerdbomber, Techtic, most of the time you see me, I'm probably wearing a sweater. Is that a fair assessment? These days, I feel like it's a fair assessment. Big sweater guy. Huge into sweaters. Sweater season is about to end. We had a good long run this year, sweater season, but it's now like mid-May, and I'm now dying. I'm wearing a sweater right now out of sheer obstinance and like stubbornness. Those two words mean the same thing.
Just
I just don't want sweater season to end.
Free.
I'm gonna have to. I think it's out of my hands now.
Have you considered sweater vest?
Doesn't have air conditioning. I actually have. I almost bought a sweater vest on clearance like 2 weeks ago. I opted out. I don't know if I'm ready. I don't know if the world is ready. It doesn't seem like the right time. I have a lot going on in my life right now. I feel like I need to be more mentally available to handle everything that comes with buying a sweater vest. So I didn't do it, but I'm going to be working through that. Our house doesn't have air conditioning yet. It's getting air conditioning tomorrow, but currently in a hot room doing a podcast with my two good friends, Nerdbomber and Techtic. It's great to be here. We're going to be talking to you about virtual reality and in particular some recent advancements, research being done on VR for a particular part of the body. That's a fun tease, right? It's got you thinking all kinds of great things, I'm sure. We're going to be talking about
Is it penis
WWE.
stuff? I hope it's penis stuff.
I mean, spoilers, it's not penis stuff. Sorry to disappoint you. We're going to be talking about WWE and their foray into a new genre of video game after their recent success of WWE 2K22. And we're going to be talking about Obi-Wan Kenobi once again, getting in one last kind of tease before the show actually comes out on May 27th. They dropped the official trailer, so we'll get to that as well. But I want to start with mouth VR. That sounds inappropriate, and it probably is. So that's the story here, guys. Scientists have invented mouth haptics for VR. Some examples of this. As developed by scientists from Carnegie Mellon University's Future Interfaces group, they've added ultrasonic transducers to a Meta Quest 2, previously the Oculus, that focused acoustic energy on the mouth. So you can feel the wind on your face while riding a bike, taking a sip from a fountain, and feeling the water on your lips, and covering yourself with spiders that you'll feel running in and around your mouth. I love they ended on that one.
Yeah, I genuinely want to know.
That's the one we're going to leave you thinking about.
Who was like, you know what would be great for this press release? Let's tell everyone they can feel spiders in their mouth. That's going to get everybody on board. Like, who thought of that? I want to know. If you are the PR person who was like, this is going to be the thing that's going to grab everyone's attention, A, you were right, it did. But B, like, please let me know who you are, because I'm intrigued.
I think, so some other examples. Walking through cobwebs in a forest. I mentioned sipping coffee, I think, or maybe I didn't. Smoking a cigarette, brushing your teeth, riding a motorbike.
If you can feel spiders in and around your mouth, let's be honest, the internet is weird. They probably just threw that in there to basically say, hey, you could probably feel someone lick your face.
Well, yeah, I think they wanted to indicate like horror games, because that's a big one, and also horror games. If you catch
with a WH.
Right. Like, so we're going to get to that part. So first of all, this group did a study that found that this boosts the authenticity, the realism of virtual reality. So apparently you feel a lot of stuff through your mouth and you don't know it, I guess. Maybe that's the takeaway. I think it's a cool takeaway. I think it's interesting. I do think it's interesting that, I don't want to say it feels disingenuous to me or like fake, but like, call this what it is, okay? Like, we are living in an increasingly sex-positive society. That's my opinion. That's my presumption. You know this is going to go to, like, sex stuff. You know that's where this is headed. You know it's going to be, like, licking stuff and all that. Like, just own that, man. Like, it almost seems weird to me that they're like, you can feel spiders on your... Like, that's such a weird corner case. Like, I get that they're going for, like, a horror vibe, but, like, just come on. Just own it. Just own what you know this is probably going to be used for. And admit to it, because it's still a cool technological advancement. It's a cool thing. I don't know. Maybe that's a weird soapbox for me to stand on.
Well, there's a lot of benefits, too, to that. Like, I'm not even trying to be pervy. Like, I guarantee you crime would be reduced.
No, neither am I.
if
Well, I
this
mean,
was
even
a
like
thing.
long distance relationships, although I feel like this alone would not solve any problems. Because if you think about it, it's like a very isolated thing. I do think that obviously people will use it for sexy time stuff, but I don't think it'll be as, I guess this sounds weird, like satisfying as people want it to be. So like, I can see this actually being used for original intent, which like, I don't know, one of the things that I always go back to, the first time I played London Heist on the PSVR, I don't know if you guys played that, it was on like the PSVR Worlds thing.
And you were, the whole time you were thinking, I wish I could feel this in my mouth right now.
Well, no, but there was,
you were thinking?
there was a point when you're talking to one of the mob bosses or something. I think it's right in the beginning before you start like shooting and there's a lot of action, but you're sitting in this bar and the mob boss gives you a cigar and you hold it up to your face, obviously like the PS Move controller. But because the headset mic built in could hear you breathe in and out, if you like took a sharp breath in, it basically reflected you smoking the cigar. And then when you blew it out, the puff of smoke would show up in front of your face. And that was super cool. So I can only imagine like how more immersive that would be if it actually felt like you were smoking a cigar. Or, I mean, I'm sure there's a bunch of other applications for this.
Right. Well, it would literally feel like they would somehow simulate the feeling of an actual cigar placed between your lips. Like it is crazy to me to think about, and I agree, it has probably wide-ranging utility. I mean, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, or well, I guess you guys can't. Neither of you are smokers, but like, I think smokers have talked about like sometimes they don't even miss like, yeah, kicking like nicotine is one thing, but like
It's an oral fixation.
yeah, just the sensation of doing it is a component of it. So to be able to introduce something like, hey, smoke in VR, and you'll be like you're smoking, but you're not, so your lungs can heal. Like there's definitely benefit to be had from this. It begs questions, you know, like
the other side of it is like the VR phenomena. You always feel like you look really cool in VR, and we all know you don't. But like people also think they look cool holding a cigarette, and so there's that.
Right.
Do you think taste and smell is like the next frontier? Like, do you think this was kind of like this first foray into like moving towards that? Because I can only imagine like this is just the tip of the iceberg. If you want to have that like experience of eating food, you want to also then taste it. Like it's one thing to be able to like feel yourself chewing, you know, but if you don't like taste or smell something, it's just what
I do not think taste and smell. What's next is the rest of your body.
I was going to say gloves. I think the gloves are next. I think the next thing, and for what it's worth, that's what the next thing should be, in my opinion, is haptic gloves. There is no longer any sort of reach out and like, you're not holding wands, you're not holding a controller, you're wearing gloves and you see something in front of you in the game, you reach out to pick it up and the game tells you you're feeling this thing, you can pick it up. To me, that's the next thing, whether it's done with ultrasonic whatever like this is, or whether it's done with something else. I don't know.
We need the full suits from the show Upload with all the little tentacles that touch your body. Those ones.
I think the biggest thing for me, and so like the Meta Quest, they actually, part of the kind of beta experience, they do have controllerless operation where because it has all the cameras on the outside for the pass through, it can see and detect your hands even if you're not holding the controller. So like you can grab things and manipulate things with just your hands, but obviously you're not getting that feedback.
Right.
But I think like for me, the biggest thing though is still real motion. Because that would solve so many problems if they could. I mean, I know they have those like kind of treadmill disc things, but they're still super expensive.
But they're not there yet.
Yeah. And I feel like the biggest thing is, you know, not being able to move, because that's the real quote unquote authentic experience, is having that weird get up in the Ready Player One movie where you're strapped into a thing and you can move in any direction and it'll pick it up.
I think taste and smell are a very long way off. Because I like everything else, you're talking about pressure sensors, you're talking about things that are very physically realizable. Taste and smell, that it becomes chemical.
Well, there's two ways to do that. Like you said, there's the chemical way where it's actually like excreting a taste or a smell, but they could also somehow tap into like a neurological pathway, which is kind of scary to think about. But I'm sure there's some sort of like nerve simulation where they could simulate the taste and smell by just like firing off specific nerve endings.
But now we're talking about something that's even harder than just the chemical way. And both of those things, I think, are harder than just like, hey, when they reach out in this exact direction,
you're going to feel the
this
tinglies.
Pressure pad on your hand like depresses and you feel something. Like, to me, that's much more realizable. It's certainly going to be expensive for a long, long time. But it is interesting. Like, even before the whole like mouth thing, I would have thought gloves would have been next. Because, again, it feels so realizable to me. And it's still very easy to take that to Sexy Town.
See, but I think
if that's their ultimate goal. Like,
in these, key development innovation milestones, gloves are already there. And so if you want to stand out amongst a sea of glove makers, you make mouth feedback.
I suppose. I just I wonder did they arrive at this destination because they did some kind of sub-study where they realized that like the best way to increase immersion is to like stimulate the mouth. Like, there might have been a reason, a very educated reason for them targeting that specific part of the body for just kind of like a general use case.
I do also wonder if it's an integration type move. So right now, they've seen the market that everyone's okay with buying the headset, and that comes with the controllers. And I know what you're saying. Why couldn't the gloves just be the controllers? Yeah, I agree. But I think their selling point might also be that they can just call it a new integrated headset, and it's already this new thing that users are familiar with, and it's just a feature that they just turn on.
Well, even I think
they don't want to.
This thing is an addition to an existing headset. Like, it works with the Meta Quest 2, but I think it said that it could eventually be applied to any other headset. So this is more like an add-on, and it kind of makes sense why they would focus on something close to the head, because now, like you said, Techtic, a lot of people are okay having the headset. People aren't even okay now having wires. Like, they want that wireless experience. I'm spoiled for sure.
So you're not adding much. Right. That makes sense. And you're not having to like, I'm sure Meta is thinking like, oh, we don't want people to have to like sell their controllers or like realize their controllers are useless. So we'll add this thing that increases the immersion. It's something else for them to buy. Like, I don't know if Meta like funded this research. They probably did, but it's very interesting, nevertheless. The application's potentially boundless, as we have mentioned. There doesn't seem to be like a rollout date for this. Probably quite a ways off. Maybe a part of a new work-focused headset called Project Cambria that Meta is currently developing for use in the metaverse. That apparently there's an internal roadmap revealing that there are 4 new VR devices on their way in the next 2 years. So this may be sooner than you think, but still probably a little bit of a ways off. So
you guys... You get your hands on one of these units. What is the first thing that you use it for? And don't say the obvious. Don't say like Sexy Time. What is the first like creative, unique thing that you would want to do with it?
I'd like to stand in a field with flowers and butterflies and feel the wind on my face in this sprawling field.
Sexy Time. I'm just kidding.
Like a Breath of the Wild type scene. That opening scene that everyone's familiar with when they think of Breath of the Wild. It's like that sort of like vast landscape. I want to feel that.
I would want to play an instrument. I think that would be really cool to get that sort of like haptic feedback of playing like a saxophone, or this is a fun fact, little known. Well, I guess not little known, but I just don't talk about it. I played the clarinet until 6th grade, and it was cool. It wasn't my first choice of instrument. That's a whole other story. But it grossed me out because the reed would get like moist.
It tastes nasty.
Yeah, and it's just like then your band teacher would come over and put their mouth on it, and then their spit would be in your reed, and it was just grody.
Okay, well that should not have happened ever. That seems psycho.
Well, like back in like the 90s, that was just like the thing though. They wanted to show you, and they didn't have like, if you were in band, there's like 50 different instruments.
Never once.
Really?
Never once did that happen to me.
So that was
that
was just a me thing. Mm.
I played various saxophones, which also have reeds, starting in 4th grade and going all the way up through when I graduated high school. Not once did my band teacher say, hey, let me show you, and grabbed it and stuff. Like, no way.
See, that happened every single band teacher that I had from the time that I started playing in 3rd grade all the way up to 6th grade, and they were different every year, would mouth my instrument. And the one I remember distinctly was the one band teacher. She always wore very bright red lipstick, and I thought I'd gotten away scot-free, and then she, like, it was like the end of the year, and she didn't like that I played something wrong, and she's like, here, let me show you. And then I couldn't do it. I couldn't. It was gross. There was a red ring all over my mouthpiece and the reed. So like, I would love to experience that again in VR without having grossness.
Always hated when my band teacher would mouth my instrument, and it was really, really strange too because I was percussion.
God. I smell a Twitter poll here. Oh wow, that was the double instrument. At Online Warriors 1, we should put a Twitter poll up saying, did your band teacher ever mouth your instrument? And just see what comes back. Because I think you're going to get a solid 90% no. I think that's just wild that happened to you. When I think about reeds, like now, like 10 plus years removed from the experience, I literally I almost gag. Like I get this weird sensory experience, like I cringe all over. I still have my saxophone. I haven't played it in like 10 plus years. But it's fun. And you sound pretty cool sometimes when you're playing it.
Now, the cool instrument is the trumpet that I wish I did, but even still.
I would, going back to the mouth VR thing, I would definitely just simulate skydiving. Just to I'd be like, let's crank this thing all the way to 11. Like, make my cheeks ripple. That's what I want.
Make me Ariel from The Little Mermaid on the rock with the water splashing into my face. And I want to look down and see my gorgeous body in a mermaid tail.
It seems like a tall order, but they can get it done. If they can make it feel like spiders are crawling on your mouth, they can probably get it done. So again, sometime in the next 2 years, it sounds like this is possible, but we really don't know. It's just interesting to consider. Let's transition to the world of Star Wars as we often do. Obi-Wan Kenobi got a official trailer as opposed to the teaser trailer for the limited series that starts streaming on May 27th. A minute and a half trailer came out on the 4th of May, of course, in honor of May the 4th be with you, which we did not celebrate last week. We were remiss about that. But some retread content here, some of the same stuff we had already seen. Luke pretending to fly a ship while on top of the hut on Tatooine, the whole deal. We did see some interesting things here, though. First of all, I am very curious about the general level of interaction between Obi-Wan Kenobi and Owen Lars. Because in the 4th episode, most people will call episode 4, Owen Lars kind of plays like he doesn't really know much about old Ben Kenobi. Could that have been this is what I mean. It's interesting. They're kind of adding character depth to Owen Lars, whereas in episode 4, when you first see him, he just kind of writes off Ben Kenobi as some old hermit, and you kind of think, oh, he just doesn't really know what's going on. Maybe he very much does know what's going on, and he's trying to get Luke off that topic kind of thing. I think it's very interesting. They have a lot to work with here. Joel Edgerton's a great actor. I think that's going to be awesome. Very hyped for that. Also very hyped for bounty hunters.
Oh, I was going to say, who do you think Kumail-Nanjiani is?
Just like an alien or something. We didn't see him, did we?
No, we saw him.
Yeah,
he was here.
on the
He
trailer.
looked very worried.
I literally thought that was Colin Farrell.
No, sir.
Did he have a beard?
Maybe.
He was the guy with the beard?
He looked very chiseled, as he does now.
Who am I thinking of that I saw? Oh yeah, he's an Obi-Wan. I could have sworn I saw Colin Farrell for a second, but it must have been Kumail-Nanjiani, and I just thought it was Colin Farrell.
Do you think by the end of the series he's going to cut his hair to represent more old man Kenobi?
He's going to go bald. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, I think so. Who do we think he is? That's a great question. A good guy. Right now, when you Google Obi-Wan Kenobi, under Kumail-Nanjiani's name, it just says question mark. So, pretty ambiguous at this point. We get, of course, the big tease here for Darth Vader. Not seeing him, but of course seeing the suit go on. We know that's coming, but it's still juicy just to think
knowing, even still knowing the big bad that Darth Vader is, they did that very well in this trailer. Where I was like, wow, I got some chills there. I was very excited with how well they did the ominousness of his voice again that we all know and love, but it felt almost like this new threat. And I was just impressed with that.
See, what's interesting to me is the more that they keep using him in trailers and teasers, I almost wish they had hung on to it. If you remember, when we watched The Mandalorian, we had no knowledge that Baby Yoda was going to appear. You got, what was it, the end of the first or maybe the second episode? And Baby Yoda appeared, and it was, such a wow moment because nobody saw it coming. I almost wish they had just hung on to Darth Vader, making him a secret, keeping that Hayden Christensen was coming back a secret and just gonna be like, this is just gonna be about Obi-Wan Kenobi. Don't worry about it. And then like at the end of the first episode or the second, it would just be like, bam, there he is. And everyone would be like, wow. Now it's just gonna be like, okay, he's here. That's cool.
It's a delicate balance. So first of all, I think there's plenty of room for other things like that. One example, we may see Yoda in this, and we don't know yet. You know, the plot surrounding the Jedi being in hiding, like, yeah, I think Yoda could very well appear at some point.
Well, the other side of it, too, is, and I kind of disagree, I think they should be introduced in parallel, and it would culminate to a meeting where you're getting the full Darth Vader side of Palpatine just beating down on his emotions and feeding on that anger, feeding on that hatred, fueling it. And then inversely, you get that sorrow and that sadness of losing a brother from Obi-Wan Kenobi and him searching for this sort of redemption within his own, failures. And I think they can culminate to this, dare I say, just beautiful moment. And it might not be emotionally beautiful, but it would be like
payoff,
episodically beautiful.
It's a delicate balance because they need to draw people in, and I honestly don't know if just Ewan McGregor coming back as Obi-Wan is going to do that. I think for me, having heard about this series being developed, hearing that Hayden Christensen was coming back as Darth Vader, if only because of the meme potential, I was like, okay, now I really have to watch this. Now I'm really in. Then the trailers came out and it looks good on its own without the Darth Vader content. But I think that does add some fuel to the fire. So I can kind of see it both ways. I think they've done a pretty good job building hype. I think they've done a really good job teasing things out a little bit. I'm really, really curious. One thing I've talked about for a long time, and I think they did it a little bit in the sequel trilogy, but I always want more Coruscant. And I'm guessing that's the planet that's shown in this trailer and the last trailer. I'm guessing that's Coruscant. It may not be, I suppose, but we see Coruscant in the prequel trilogy, and it's literally a city planet. Imagine how much could go on in a city planet, on a city planet that it probably has like 6 different underworlds. Like there's so much to parse there, and we don't see much of it. I want more of that. I want more seedy bounty hunters hunting Obi-Wan Kenobi. Like, yes, I want Jedi content, but like Obi-Wan Kenobi firing a blaster in this trailer, that was cool too. He's probably pretty reticent about using a lightsaber because it reveals him. So I just think there's a lot of cool things to be explored here in that kind of vein, and couldn't be more excited about it. I think this trailer is doing all the right things. It's going to be a day one for me, which Disney Plus, I'm not high on them right now. I'm not high on their supply. I stopped watching Moon Knight officially. I'm done. Like, I think I watched 3 or 4 episodes and it got too weird and like not very good. I was just like, this isn't worth it. So I got off that train. I haven't watched Hawkeye. I haven't watched...
Hawkeye was good.
What was the other one? I haven't watched Book of Boba Fett. Like, there's just a lot of things that I just like... I haven't felt the need. I don't know if it's like Disney exhaustion, Marvel exhaustion, or Star Wars. I don't know what it is. I'm going to be day one for Obi-Wan, though, because this looks like it's a too big to miss event.
I do get what you're saying. Like, it feels like Disney Plus has been throwing stuff at us the last couple years where, I don't know about you guys, but like the first year that you had Disney Plus and shared it with us, I don't even know how long Disney Plus has been around, but it felt like we couldn't wait for more things to drop because there wasn't a ton of stuff. Like, we got The Mandalorian, and I don't even remember what else we got, if anything, that first year. Like, I think The Mandalorian was like the biggest one.
The Jeff Goldblum show.
Oh, that's right.
The World According to Jeff Goldblum was pretty funny for a little bit. I haven't watched it in a really long time, but it was pretty funny for a little bit.
But like, The Mandalorian just felt super quality, and then all of a sudden, like, you had WandaVision, but then right on the heels of that, you had Falcon and Winter Soldier, and then right on the heels of that, you had more things dropping, and it just feels like there's so much coming. Right. And then in addition to the fact that now it's not just we're at home and this is the only stuff we're getting, there's movies on top of this, especially in the MCU. There's just so much. It's so hard to keep up.
Showing continual growth to the shareholders is just draining the lifeblood of everyone that enjoys things. So stop adding. Well, make it a drip again.
I don't know. Like, The Mandalorian did something pretty exceptional, and I think unfortunately, I think it showed Disney Plus, whether correct or incorrect, like, we can make Marvel shows. I don't even know if I can say right now that Marvel shows are generally a good idea. On balance, they're not for me.
I would say it's like a 50-50 split right now. Like, they're either really good or really mediocre, and there's no in between.
I just don't know, like, for me, when I sit down to watch a show, I'm looking for something like, to use a recent example, a show that I thought was phenomenal, Severance on Apple TV Plus. That, to me, that's like, it was very bingeable. It was very interesting. It was very unique. Marvel shows and Star Wars shows, even, like, no matter how you slice it, no matter if they're more gritty or if they're more something or other, even WandaVision, which was unique in a lot of ways, you still pretty much know what you're getting, and it's a lot more of the same thing that you've seen at the movies. And that just, I think eventually that wears off. Yeah, like the thrill of that wears off, and you're left with, situations like now where I'm like, I guess I'll go see Multiverse of Madness. I'm probably going to not understand certain things. Like, they're at a delicate point right now with all of this. I don't know that I would say Star Wars is in danger of doing the same thing, which again is why I'm excited about Obi-Wan. But the Marvel content needs to slow its pace.
Well, I think the Star Wars content, like the Book of Boba Fett, and part of that was I heard bad things about it, so that didn't make me want to watch it. But it also released amongst a slew of Marvel stuff. And I just don't know if anybody's attention can support that many dramatic shows dropping at the same time. And by dramatic, I mean, like, you got to pay attention. They're like an hour-long show that you actually have to actively watch. Like, you can't just throw it on. It's heavy-ish for the most part. Like, maybe get some ha-has here and there, but for the most part, like, it's action, somewhat heavy. There's stuff that you have to pay attention to figure out because there's Easter eggs. Like, you can't passively watch it. And that's a lot to drop all at once. And I think that was something that kind of hurt the Book of Boba Fett.
The Mandalorian did something really exceptional. They made a half-hour-long show that had the production value of a movie that was very, very brilliantly episodic in the sense that you would watch an episode in a given week and you would say, okay, that was good, and I'm not clamoring for the next one, and that's okay. I think that was the great thing about The Mandalorian is you would watch an episode and you would say, that was a great experience, and now I'm good until next week comes around. And when next week comes around, I'll be ready to watch it again, and I'll be excited to watch it again. Like, there's this, like, there's an interesting psychology with that I don't know if I can fully wrap my head around, but the Marvel grind is not hitting that right now. It's too much, and I don't know if they're biting off more than they can chew at this point. When I see Multiverse of Madness, I guess I'll revisit that point. But for right now, all I can say is I'm really excited about Obi-Wan. And that doesn't seem likely to change before May 27th when it comes out. So that brings us to the halfway point of the show, at which point I would be remiss, for the second time today I've said that, I would be remiss if I did not shout out our fantastic Patreon producer, Mr. Stephen Keller. Stephen, it's a pleasure having you around. It's a pleasure having you at our table, our square table, as a knight. Stephen is a knight. He supports us at the highest of our 3 levels of Patreon support. As a result, he gets this producer's shout out. He gets input into the weekly game segment, which I am hosting this week. More details to come on that. And he also, of course, gets access to the monthly secret segment and vlog, as well as the occasional guest spot, which is coming up for Stephen. You can also support us at the Squire level on our Patreon, which gets you access to the monthly secret segment and vlog. And there's also a page level, which gets you access to the monthly secret segment. So details on any and all of those levels of support can be found over at patreon.com/onlinewarriorspodcast. Get the details there. Say hi to Stephen. Say hi to us. Help us keep this thing going if you like what you listen to. Thanks again to Stephen. We'll take a short break now to shout out a sponsor, and we'll be back to talk about WWE.
Hey, welcome to the Last Comic Shop Podcast,
a comic book podcast that actually talks about comics.
Yep, each week we open the shop up and read and discuss a comic.
Sometimes we pair that up with comic book movies or TV shows.
Or not. Lots of times it's just comic books and sound effects.
Oh, yes, definitely lots of sound effects.
So tune in on all the major podcasting platforms for the Last Comic Shop Podcast, or check out our library of evergreen shows at www.lastcomicshoppodcast.com.
Okay, we are back to talk about what does WWE stand for? Because I tried to figure it out before and I couldn't. Is it World Wrestling Entertainment? Do we know? Does anyone? Do we have any wrestling fans here?
I think that's correct.
I'm Vince McMahon, that's all I know. He's in a lot of GIFs, a lot of funny GIFs and memes. Guys, they've signed a deal to make an official wrestling role-playing game with an official reveal coming soon. 80% of its audience is gamers. So they're expanding into a new division with a new RPG. They had some pretty bad, I don't want to say bad luck, but 2K20 came out and that did pretty badly. They took a year's break. They did not come out with the 2K21. They came out with the 2K22, which has done very well. And the CEO of the company, chief brand manager, I should say, Stephanie McMahon, says this tactic proved very successful for the franchise. So now they're looking to get into RPGs, and even not being a fan. So there's some interesting things to discuss here. I'm not a wrestling fan. With that said, it's a great landscape of video games. And I mean that both in the sense of the traditional WWE games, which are very great arcadey experiences, but I also think a wrestling role-playing
This has
game
huge potential.
It makes a crap load of sense, right? I mean, you've seen franchises like Madden even dip their toes into this, where they say you can create a player and you get drafted and you basically take them through their career.
I think Madden's
and that's a team sport where it makes
no.
Tony Hawk.
It's
Have you guys played Face of the Franchise in Madden at all? I don't know when the last time you guys have played.
I've watched you play it.
It's been a really long time. I think the concept makes some sense, but the fact that it's a team sport is always going to dilute that, right? Tony Hawk is a good example.
What's interesting about Face of the Franchise, though, is like there's a story there. And I would say that this is as loose of an RPG as you could get. But you're a character, and yeah, you're playing a team game, but you only play as that one character. Unless you're obviously offense or defense.
Right.
But the way, like, you can choose to skip, like, if you're an offensive player, choose to skip defense. But then, like, there are choices that you make that do impact how your season goes and how your player grows and what kind of stats they have and what kind of career they're going to have. Granted, like you said, though, it ultimately turns back into a sports game. But, like, I think this could be interesting if it follows that sort of path. And something that I was kind of thinking of is, I don't know if you guys watched like Fighting with My Family, which is the Florence Pugh movie.
I did not.
It's really good. You should watch it. Yeah, like I'm not even a huge wrestling fan, and I loved that movie. And I like when Techtic brought it up, this is before I even really knew who Florence Pugh was. I was like, I don't think I'm gonna like this, but okay, I guess it's.
I believe. Well, I think it was her breakout movie.
I think it was. Yeah, and
yeah.
Having something where you like literally start on the streets doing
That's why I said Tony Hawk. That's why that's a way more parallel to an RPG, because like I believe Tony Hawk's Underground 2, you were like doing tricks in your backyard, and like backyard wrestling has a huge community. So starting in your backyard wrestling, you can even have mattresses down and you're just doing body slams and practicing moves and that. It is just, the story builds itself. And the best part about skating and wrestling as opposed to football is, football has the trajectory, high school, college, NFL. Whereas wrestling, it's like, it can be anything. It could be...
You can be a 50-year-old dude and they're like, hey, and then you're, like you said, just doing like mud belly flops in your backyard, and you go from there.
Yeah, and you just have this look and this uniqueness and this ability to like be a showman. Because keep in mind, it's a sport, because there's a significant amount of athleticism involved in wrestling, but also there's a bit of showmanship there. That's like the biggest part.
Not a bit, a lot.
They're like full on soap operas with the amount of drama that's in these matches.
So that's what I was gonna say though. Do you think they're gonna pick the realistic path, like, become a pro mode in whatever game? Or do you think they're going to say like, hey, we have this drama built out. We have these wrestlers and personas that people love. Let's just take these people and basically like slap them in an RPG world. And the wrestling is like your combat, but that's not like, you're not actually a wrestler. Do you know what I'm saying? Like make them in a more fantastical world and make the wrestlers your persona, your character, and like wrestling is your superpower and that's how you slay your foes, but like you work up to facing the big bad or whatever at the end. Do you think they'll do something like that?
No, absolutely. It's going to be, you're going to these matches, you're trying local things, and they're like, you have to like work out to get a certain amount of score, and then they go, nah, you don't have it, kid, sorry, and you try all these. It's going to be the life. I don't think it's going to be a superhero shenanigans.
WWE, I don't think is imaginative enough for that. And for what it's worth, like, to their credit, I also think that the traditional route is a perfectly good idea. Like, there's so much potential here. What I want for it, wrestling is such an interesting industry in that if you're a wrestler, what is the end goal? Because for me, if I was a wrestler, which
to become the
if you
Rock,
see me, you would know. I could exactly. It's become The Rock. It's become John Cena. It is. You use wrestling as a springboard with which you parlay yourself into massive media careers. Like, I don't know how you make a game out of that necessarily, but if there's a way, they should find it. Because, like, I think there's so much more to this than, okay, work out and wrestle and, like, move up the ranks of wrestling. There should be a point at which, okay, a talent agent is interested in you for this thing, and then it becomes kind of like a choose your own adventure thing that I think could become really multi-layered, really interesting.
Well, yeah, you can have them being like, like you said, John Cena has his "you can't see me" shtick. What's your line and what's your theme? There should not be two like characters ever. It should be fully customizable. Period.
Which makes it really ambitious, and you wonder. I don't know if it says in here what developer is behind this or what developer will be behind this. I don't know who they've even worked with. Like, I don't know who they work with on their mainline games.
Isn't it Take-Two?
It looks like it's 2K.
Or 2K?
Yeah, it's because it's the 2K game. So I don't know if 2K is going to sign up for this or it's going to be some other brand looking to make a splash in a very deep, infinite choice RPG where you build this character that can become basically anything. Like, it has a lot of potential depth, but it's going to require the proper execution. Yeah, it's very exciting. Again, WWE, they're riding a high right now. 8 out of 10 is what IGN gave the 2K22. So even their traditional, mainline games are doing well now, but I would love to see this become something, and it could provide a roadmap to, like, a boxing game. There's plenty of sports. In as much as there are plenty of sports games out, there's probably still a lot of unmined sporting content in the video game world. So it'd be cool to see the WWE branch out a little bit. We'll see, though. No official announcement yet, but there is an official reveal reportedly coming soon. It's What Are You Up To Wednesday time.
What are you up to Wednesday?
Let's talk about what we've been up to. Nerdbomber, ladies first. Chivalry's not dead.
All right, so
I don't know. Go ahead.
we binged everything available in Girls5Eva. I can't remember if we talked about this last week, but
Girls5Eva.
we're on.
You definitely did not.
Okay. So, like I said, we had a 1 month kind of subscription to Peacock because we wanted to watch Marry Me. We binge Killing It. That was great. You should watch it. And then we were like, okay, what else can we watch? Let's like a super quick show. We wanted something half an hour, something funny, something light. So I was scrolling through and I see Sarah Bareilles. And I'm like, what is this? And she is starring in a half-hour comedy show called Girls5Eva about an old 90s one-hit wonder girl band, kind of in the same vein as Spice Girls, and what they're up to in their 40s and how they get sampled by a rapper. So, like, you know, their top hit, one-hit wonder, their line is like in the background layered over his song, and how they reconnect and then decide to get back together. And kind of their mishaps and missteps in their journey to try to resurrect their careers as 40-something-year-old girl band members. It's really funny. Busy Phillips is in it. Like I said, Sarah Bareilles.
I'm a Sarah B.
It's produced by Tina Fey.
Produced by Tina Fey. It's way funnier than I expected it to be. Like, there's a lot of stupid humor, but it really, if you were alive in the 90s, if you liked girl bands and boy bands, it takes a lot of jabs at the entire culture surrounding those and just how ridiculous it was. And it's so entertaining. And I'm sure not everybody would relate to it, but I don't know, as someone who was really into like your NSYNCs, Backstreet Boys, Spice Girls back in the day, this really hit home. And also there's some like really catchy earworms that I can't get out of my head. And there's actually, so season 1 is fully released. Season 2 just started coming out, I believe, on Thursday. The first 3 episodes of season 2 dropped, and I think they come out every Thursday. And I would definitely recommend this. It's funny. There's a lot of like I said, kind of old school social commentary about that whole scene back in the day that I found really hilarious. I'm really digging like half-hour comedies right now, so it was good. And then speaking of that half-hour comedy trend, we started watching Abbott Elementary as well. We're only a few episodes in. It is really good. I'm really loving all of these short comedies that we're discovering. I think it's basically, I likened it to The Office, but in a school, and I love it. It's great so far.
Yeah. Abbott Elementary, when it was rolling out, was very hyped, and I got there a little bit. I didn't mention in the podcast, we binged it real fast, like 3 weeks ago, and it lives up to the hype. It's very good. Every character is good. It's one of those shows that shows like that thrive when every character is good, and every character on that show is good.
So aside from that, just watching TV, doing some yard work outside, also getting into some reading. I have some books on the docket, and just kind of getting back into the swing of things, because I kind of take some time off during winter, play more video games than I read. But I'm getting back into it with a book called The Giver of Stars, written by Jojo Moyes. But The Giver of Stars is actually a historical fiction and not a romance about the old pack horse librarians back in the day. It's really neat. There's a lot of obviously this is historical fiction, but it is based on reality. Like the pack horse librarians were a thing. They actually rode through the mountains and brought people books who lived in rural areas and couldn't make it into town to get to a library, and helped to teach people how to read and learn. And I didn't know that was a thing. And so I learned something, and that's pretty cool. And that's all I got.
Learning something is always cool. You heard it first here, or you probably didn't hear it first here, but you heard it here first, but you get the point. Learning things is cool. Techtic, what have you been up to?
So, perusing movies to watch, I fell on The Greatest Showman starring Hugh Jackman. And I wasn't sure if I was...
It's an oldie.
Yeah.
Oldie at this point.
I wasn't sure if I was going to like it because La La Land didn't really capture me. I tell you, this movie I thought was fantastic. This was it far exceeded expectations. And it was catchy, it was fun, and you feel bad for all the characters, and you like all the characters, and it's just, except for the one drunk guy. You don't like him. Screw that guy.
That's Rewrite the Stars, right? With Zac Efron and Zendaya.
Yeah.
Great couple.
Also, I'm pro Zac Efron and Zendaya over Tom Holland. There, I said it.
I was just gonna say I don't agree with that, but I was just gonna say Zach. I offer to the listeners the fact that I'm a heterosexual man. If Zac Efron propositioned me, I'd probably be into it.
Breathing really
He's
heavy.
got it going.
Hey,
he's got it going on.
When I was in college, so freshman year, my roommate and I both got really sick, and I don't remember what made us watch High School Musical all weekend, but we did.
It's probably because you guys were all in this together.
Maybe
you got down with the Efron fever.
Well, yeah. So then we had a shirtless poster of Zac Efron, and then she kept that, and then bought me another Zac Efron poster for sophomore year, because we didn't end up in the same room anymore sophomore year, but we remained connected through our love of Zac Efron.
And now it's between. It's like under Nerdbomber's mattress.
No, it's still on the wall. My head is just taped on his head. That's all.
and it's a spitting image of you.
Yeah.
If I may. Cool. What else you got for us?
Oh yeah, and then we also watched a movie called Windfall.
Oh, you watched Windfall. I'm actually really curious about this. Not that I'm not curious about other stuff you guys have watched, but we want to watch this. I love Jesse Plemons so much. Tell me it was good.
It was better than I expected.
You didn't like it.
No, it was
Oh,
good.
No.
It was good. It wasn't great. It was good. Jason Segel played his character very, very well.
Yeah, we thought it was going to be a comedy.
A little funnier, I guess.
Oh, no. It looks like a pretty intense suspense thriller is what I thought it was.
Yeah, but I thought it was going to be not as dark as it was. Like
a little more haha social commentary-y, where you could be yep, but
it was very heavy on the artistic vibes. There were lulls, and then there was dramatic music, which I appreciate that, and it was done very well, but I guess I wasn't mentally prepared to be in that headspace. and it went ahead and put me there.
I get that.
Like I said, though, it wasn't
Okay.
bad. It was good. I would say it was good. It wasn't what we were expecting it to be, but it was good. It was more art housey than I think we thought it was going to be, but we should have expected that. So that's on us.
That's exactly.
Duly noted. Oh yeah, I'll give it a watch at some point. That didn't really tamp the fire out in me to watch it, so maybe you'll hear from me about that next week or the week after or something. On my part, I want to shout out a video game. So I'm still in the midst of a move and a lot of busy life things, so I haven't had time to get back to Mass Effect yet. That's a long-term experience, but I wanted something that I could sit down and play for like a half hour to 45 minutes, and it would be a complete end-to-end experience that I could more easily walk away from. And I've also wanted to utilize the Switch a lot more because it allows me to do this handheld thing that, again, is just a lot easier in a lot of different circumstances. So I bought it was $10 when I bought it this weekend. It might still be $10, and if it is, you should buy it. It's called Wingspan, and it's based on the board game that is very popular called Wingspan. So it's basically a board game port to the Switch, but it's extremely pleasant if you're a fan of like Euro games or anything like that. It's a really great port. You're going to like it a lot. I've played twice, I've lost once, and I've won once. So I would say the difficulty is pretty well dialed in because I feel like I'm probably a pretty average board game player. But that's been fun. I've been looking into other similar board games that have ports on the Switch that I can buy. I might buy Sagrada as well because that's one of my favorite board games ever. So I've been doing that. Another thing I wanted to shout out is a show that's been on TV for a long time. I'm actually not even sure it's on anymore. It might have ended, but it's on HBO Max. I've been meaning to watch it for a long time because it seems very interesting. It's a show called Nathan For You. Have you guys ever watched this show, Nathan For You?
No.
So this show is about Nathan. So Nathan Fielder is a comedian who went to business school at what he calls a very good business school in Canada, and he got good grades. That's in the intro of the show. And the whole premise of this show is it's a satirical kind of reality program where he goes to businesses and acts as kind of like a business expert to help struggling businesses get back on their feet by giving them just the most insane nonsense ideas ever. So I've only watched one episode, but I'm going to watch a lot more. Again, for the reason that it's like a very enclosed half-hour thing that's very funny and very unique. In the episode I watched, he went to a pizza place and said that the best way for them to get more customers in would be to offer an 8-minute delivery guarantee, which is, of course, never going to happen. So it's 8-minute delivery or you get a free pizza, but it didn't specify how big the pizza was, so he had them make 1-inch pizzas and give them out for free whenever the deliveries were late, and then see if people would still pay full price for the pizza, which is a very interesting social experiment. He also tried to revitalize the customer base of a frozen yogurt stand by getting them to sell poop-flavored yogurt. So it's hard to... well, that's not really the point of the show. Let me put it that way. It's hard to even say because everything is so satirized. His personality really drives it. It's a very dry, almost dark humor. I would recommend watching the first episode to see if you like it because there's no way for me to describe it in such a way that you'll know from my description. But it's like 22 minutes long as an episode, so you'll probably know pretty quick.
It sounds like he has this uncanny ability to keep a straight face no matter the situation.
It's incredibly deadpan.
Do you think I can pull off such a role?
I do.
Nice.
Yes. Without hesitation, I would say yes.
Nice.
In fact, we should try it sometime. Let's book that. So that's it for me. I'm also reading an Agatha Christie book, but that's not very interesting. And I haven't read very much of it because, again, I am very busy. But hopefully more fun things to come next week. As for right now, looking at the quiz rankings, Nerdbomber is at 5-5. I am at 6-6. Techtic is at 5-6. And Stephen Keller, 1-0. Congratulations to Stephen. I'm hosting this week. So this is, again, we're so knotted up here at basically a 500 record that whoever wins this, well, no, actually, Techtic could win and we would like all be tied then. It's actually weird. No, actually, Techtic would jump over Nerdbomber at that point and be tied with me. Anyways, this quiz is about the Oregon Trail. Now, that could mean anything from the game to the actual Oregon Trail. There's kind of a mix of those two things in here. These are all, of course, numerically based questions, Price is Right style. You guys know, you've listened to this show before. I have 5 questions before me, as well as a tiebreaker should it be needed. So I'm going to start. The first two questions I'm going to do are going to be, we're going to get the unhappy questions out of the way right away. As many of you may know, one of the more popular ways to die
Dysentery.
in the Oregon Trail game is dysentery. How many people die of dysentery every year worldwide?
Like currently?
Currently, as we live and breathe. And we'll start with Nerdbomber first.
I feel like it's probably more than we think. I'm going to say 25,000.
It's way more than that. I'm going to say 50,000.
So, when you look up dysentery on Wikipedia, it says dysentery, other names, bloody diarrhea. So if you need to know what dysentery is, that's all I'll say. Guys, it's 1.1 million. There's a lot of problems with dysentery in the world, particularly in Central and South America, Africa, and Asia. Apparently, it happens a lot still.
See, I guess I wanted to say that it was less of a problem, but also I guess I overestimated the world a little bit. Oops.
So, Techtic on the board, right out of the gate. Good for Techtic. Continuing with our kind of grim description of the Oregon Trail, we're going to talk now about the actual Oregon Trail. Purportedly, how many graves were there for every 1 mile of trail?
You weren't kidding. This is dark. Wow.
And are you going to tell us how many miles the trail is?
Don't do this to me. Don't try and steal the questions. It's not fair.
So the answer is no. Okay. I have a number, just in case it's a question. I have a number of what I believe the Oregon Trail length is in miles.
Okay.
And based on that, I think it's X number of graves. So I'm going to say, I'm not going to say with my multiplier either, because that would give away my number. But I'm going to say so you want the total number of graves or how many per mile?
No. How many graves per mile of trail?
Oh, this is less calculations and more just guesstimations.
That is the point.
Is it a whole number?
It is a whole number.
I'm going to say 3.
I think it's more than that. I'm going to say 10 just so I don't bust, but I think it's 10 because all the like quote unquote safe areas are going to be pulled up by all of the creeks. And I know this from the game. A lot of wagons went over in the creek.
This is uncanny. So it is 10 graves for every 1 mile of trail. And one of the things cited in this article is accidental drownings from exactly what you just described. So Nerdbomber, you are
a lot
up
of
on
Oregon
your
Trail.
Oregon Trail. That was honestly intimidating.
I played it one time.
You've only played it one time?
Correct.
There was the whole, depending on what version you played, there was a whole area where you had to cross the river and you had to hope that your ox would make it or you would fall over. And it was very stressful.
I played it one time. I said this game is bull crap because it's just random and there's no skill involved. Screw this.
There was a lot of skill. It was all about balancing your resources.
And then something dumb happens.
Which is why you needed to balance your resources to plan ahead.
You needed to plan ahead. You needed to prepare. Boy Scout motto. Next question. How long was the Oregon Trail in miles? So Nerdbomber, you will go first. Techtic apparently already thinks he knows.
I used to know this because it was part of one of the games. I think it was part of like the 8-bit game. I'm going to say 800 miles, but I think it's more. But I'm going to say 800.
It is more. It's 801 miles.
Oh, screw you.
Using the +1, not a great +1 use, 2,170 miles. In other words, pretty long. I have a map of it in front of me here, but the states aren't kind of labeled. Looks like it goes from Iowa all the way up to like the Pacific Ocean. So you can do the math there if you want to. So Techtic takes the lead, 2-1. Now we're going to talk a little bit more about the games in particular. When was the first Oregon Trail game released? We're looking for a year here. And we're up to Techtic is up first now.
I'm going to say 1978.
That's a really good guess. 1979.
Nerdbomber, you wasted your +1. You both busted. This is kind of a trick. So the game that most people probably know was released in 1985. However, the original Oregon Trail video game was a text-based strategy video game that was released in 1971. You had to play this game using a teleprinter. This was like one of the first games, basically. Totally text-based. You would type in responses to prompts, basically, and it would tell you what you had. It would keep track of all your resources for you. 1971 was when the first one came out. There have been a number of iterations since then, obviously. But the important thing here is that Nerdbomber wasted her +1, and now it's 2-1. Techtic is up, and there's one question to go. Nerdbomber, you go first. Techtic has used his +1, so all is not lost, but this is going to be a tough one. We're going to continue testing not really continue, we haven't really tested it yet, your knowledge of history. In the original Oregon Trail game, so again, the 1971 game, in what year do you play the role of a wagon leader guiding a party from Independence, Missouri to Oregon City, Oregon in a covered wagon? Basically, in what general time period was this a thing, if that wasn't clear?
1801.
It's later than that. It's 1822.
It is 1847. Now, 1985, the 1985 game, again, the one that's very popular, I believe it changed to 1848, but either way, Techtic takes this one home by a good margin here. My tiebreaker was that over 65 million copies of the game in its various forms have been sold. That's including all renditions of the game as well as like board games. There's a card game that's fairly popular that I played a couple times. So the Oregon Trail is a big deal, and people die of dysentery a lot. And Nerdbomber lost, which actually takes her down to last place. So that moves Techtic to 6-6. I'm 6-6. Nerdbomber is 5-6. Once again, it is literally as close as it can be. Steven 1-0. Steven clearly with the best record amongst us. But next week, Techtic will host, and Nerdbomber and myself will decide who's going to be in last place, basically, is what that's going to be, at least for the next week. So, with that, we will conclude today's episode, and we'll take you out with a tech tip.
Don't do drugs.
Pretty simple this week. Good tip. We'll see you next week.